All right. So welcome to our 2018 numerology talk. This talk is something that I've given every year for the last number of years, pretty much since building up to 2012, I think. And so I've been tracking and monitoring, how the themes for each year are showing up. And it's a really fascinating process to look at the last year in review, or the last, number of years that we've been building up to or going through, and then look at where it's all heading. And in particular, I'm going to be drawing from Kabbalah, numerology, and the tarot. And so this is called the Kabbalistic Numerology forecast. So I'm going to be drawing from all of those different things. And it's a slightly unique way of approaching the forecast for the year in terms of numerology and Kabbalah and the tarot. So I'm going to go through, because I know that there's probably a number of people here who have not necessarily heard the introduction. I'm going to go through it kind of fast, the introduction kind of building up to, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to share with you in terms of the specifics from the last year and this year. And so we're going to go through the numerology and Kabbalah and the tarot intro really quickly. If you want a more full introduction to all of that, there are videos online at YouTube /Universal Kabbalah. That's Kabbalah. So Universal Kabbalah YouTube channel has several videos from the previous years, and you can get more of the full description of the introduction if you want to review that. But I know some people have also heard all of that already, and so, but it's nice to have the review. And then just a brief introduction. So my name is Theresa Bullard, and I'm one of the international instructors for the Modern Mystery School. So everything that I'm delivering here is a combination of mystery school teachings and some of my own personal studies into numerology and tarot, and then just fusing it together intuitively. So here we go. So first of all, how many of you, those of you in person, how many of you have actually been to one of these talks before? Okay, several of you. And some of the folks online have heard this before, maybe watched the videos, but most of them, we've got people tuning in from Seattle, from San Francisco Bay Area, from Boston, from Minneapolis, and I think even Texas, and maybe some other areas on the East Coast. So we've got people from all over tuning in tonight through the Zoom, and I'm going to be kind of splitting my focus a little bit between the two, but hopefully this will all work out smoothly. So yeah, I think I'm not going to spend too much time on my background, just to say that the Modern Mystery School is a ancient mystery school tradition. So it's got a lineage which goes back thousands of years, unbroken. And so the teachings I have found through my time of training and working with the mystery school, which I found in 2001 and received my first activation from them in 2001, and then got initiated in 2001. And then just, continued on, started studying in Kabbalah in 2002, and just absolutely fell in love, because it brings together ancient metaphysical teachings and wisdom teachings really from all over the world, not just Kabbalistic, but all the ancient wisdom traditions I find have a nexus. They kind of find a meeting ground within the mystery school teachings. And it's a very practical, very grounded approach to spirituality. So it's really focused on giving you the tools, giving you both the teachings and the methods for your own empowerment, so that you can take your personal evolution into your own hands and apply those tools so that you can accelerate your growth, both physically and spiritually. So it's very grounded approach, and it's a nice fusion between the mystical and the ancient, as well as the modern way of life and new science. We talk everywhere from quantum physics to chakras. So it's the full spectrum, and it's very, very hands-on, very much about your growth. So it's not just about knowledge that is interesting, it's about knowledge that's going to really help you accelerate your personal development and evolution. And so my hope with tonight's talk with the numerology is that it will also be helpful to you, not just interesting information, but that it's really something that you can use to kind of like tune in to the right dial, to the right frequencies that are trying to come in over the next year, and use that as a way to help you navigate through whatever comes up over the coming year. And I have found that over the last number of years, since I've been really monitoring and teaching on these archetypes that are coming through, and especially since the new millennium, I have found that being aware of it has really helped me make sense of some of the world events that are going on and some of the personal events that are going on. And so, we've had some crazy times and, wild events happening. And then we've had some really amazing events happening. And to watch, those themes evolve and to see it in a bigger context, that, oh, this is all heading somewhere. And where is it heading? And where are we going? And, in the past, we've been in some pretty dicey time in that it's a 22-year sequence that we're going to talk about. And we've been in some pretty challenging points in the past. And now we're coming through the other side of that back into, the light at the end of the tunnel was kind of what started coming in this last year. And we have I'm really happy that we're in the phase we're in now, because I have good news for the coming years. Whereas in previous years when I've done this talk, I've had some I just have a lot of warnings for you mostly. So first of all, let's get into numerology. So any of you who are here want to just say what you know of it in terms of what is numerology? Is it new to anyone?
Fine.
Thank you. Oh, that didn't work. No, that's not working. I don't know where the thing is. Am I going to have to push the trackpad every time?
I don't know.
Okay, no, I can push the buttons now.
Okay.
That'll be easier. So numerology, does anyone have, Nikki?
So my kind of understanding of numerology is that they all contain wisdom, and they have energy, and there's a vibration associated with it, and meaning, and you can sort of harness those the power of the number and the wisdom in the number to use as tools to make more educated and informed decisions in your life.
Okay, good. So just to repeat, in case people didn't hear her online, so we have wisdom in every number, right? And there's a vibration. There's a unique energy or signature to each number, and they show up a lot. Numbers can show up a lot in our lives as sort of a sign, a synchronicity, let's say, to help guide us in our life. So there might have been times where you're driving along the freeway and you're thinking about something, and all of a sudden you look up and you see a license plate with a repetition of the same number, right? Like 777. Or, maybe you're thinking about something, you look at the clock and it's 11:11, right? How many of you have ever had that kind of experience before? So I find when you're willing to tune your mind in to numbers as one of the ways that the universe can communicate to you, because numbers or math or frequency is one of the primary building blocks of the universe. And so when we start to tune in to that language of the universe, that language of frequency, then we're giving, now we're telling the universe, okay, I'm paying attention, and you can communicate to me through numbers, right? And you can do this with other things as well. You can communicate to me through geometry, right? Sacred geometry is another building block of the universe. Through colors, right? So there's different things that we can use that are more fundamental building blocks to the universe that we can use as means of communication. And so when you start paying attention, then now it becomes an open door for the universe to use that as a method for it to communicate to you, your guides or spirit, whatever you want to call it. Synchronicity allows, you're giving a playing field for synchronicity once you start paying attention to these types of things. And they say in ancient metaphysical tradition that every letter has a number behind it. So, and every sacred geometry would have a number behind it, right? So numbers are like the core essence, the core frequency of those various aspects of creation. And so one of the things that we do in numerology is we're paying attention to numbers. Each number has a specific meaning. Each number is an archetype. So like if we look at the tree of life, for example, you don't see the numbers in here. Those of you who are here, you can see them on that other diagram, but they're numbered, and each of those numbers from 1 to 9 and then 10 has a very unique aspect of creation, or an aspect of the divine that it is trying to transmit. So in Kabbalah, we relate those numbers to the tree of life rather than like other, I've done a lot of numerology research in the past as well, outside of Kabbalah context, and they have slightly different interpretations. But the more I've studied numerology, both prior to mystery school and after mystery school using Kabbalah, I find that the Kabbalistic interpretation to those numbers is very revealing and very consistent. So you're going to hear maybe some different interpretations of some of the numbers than what you've been exposed to if you've ever studied any numerology. But just so you know, we're relating it specifically to the tree of life and to the key archetypes. And one of the things that happens, so numerology is based on 1 to 9. So 1 is the starting of a sequence or a cycle, and 9 is the ending of a cycle, or the completion. Like once you hit a 9, you've got all the ingredients you need for completion of that creative process. And then in Kabbalah, 10 would be the final result of that whole creative process. But 10, so the other thing in numerology is when you have a double number or triple number, you have multiple numbers, you take those numbers and you add them together. It's what we call reduction. And then that produces, a number that is, so like if we took 10, we take 1 and 0, 1 plus 0 is 1, right? So 10 and 1 are the same. You could take 11, and 11 is 1 and 1, and that's 2. And you can do this for every number. And when we reduce, you continue reducing until you get between 1 and 9, right? So even if we took like 99, that would add up to 18, but then 1 plus 8 is 9, right? So we would keep reducing until you get between 1 and 9. So this is just sort of the core essence of numerology. And then we have Kabbalah. So Kabbalah is basically the study of life. And the word Kabbalah means to receive, or that which is received. And so it refers to a really ancient oral tradition of humans studying life and how to make the most of this life and how to really succeed in the physical life in particular. And then once we've identified answers to some of the more important questions that help us really thrive in life, those answers have been passed down through generations, and methods for how to really make the most and to attain more of our full potential have also been passed down through the generations, through oral tradition primarily. And then it is the study of this glyph that we call the tree of life. And the tree of life is a sacred geometry, which is actually the framework of your DNA, right? So your DNA is structured or built around this sacred pattern called the tree of life. And so Kabbalists would call the tree of life the blueprint for life. They may be in, 3,000 plus years ago, they didn't necessarily have the word DNA, but they had this idea of the blueprint of life. And in today's science, we have found that the blueprint of life is within the DNA. And yet, if you look at the structure of the tree, that DNA is like if you took a tree upon a tree upon a tree upon a tree, and you have the base pairs here of your DNA ladder, then you're building that ladder and you just twist it and there's your double helix. But there's more to it than what science knows of as the chemical DNA. So the fundamental pattern of the tree of life is more the core essence of that blueprint of life. Okay, and so in Kabbalah we're studying this tree of life, and we use it as a pattern for how to really not only transform and evolve ourselves to become most aligned with that original blueprint, like what we were originally intended to be, which is divine, right? Which has a lot more capacity than what we're currently manifesting. But we also use it as a way to understand how does energy flow from the higher spiritual realms down into the physical. So we're using Kabbalah both as a means of transformation and ascension back to our full potential, as well as a way to harness the process of creating whatever it is we want to create into the physical, so that we can bring more of our light into the actual physical density, so that we can, Kabbalists say that our whole purpose ultimately is to awaken to what we call the Adam Kadmon, or the perfected human, that within our blueprint, within our DNA, is the potential for like a superhuman, like a godlike human. And that's been one of their higher teachings, for thousands of years, that we have within us. We were created in the image of God, so to speak. We have within us this potential to be godlike, to be superhuman, right? To be more fully awakened to our potential. Most people are, maybe manifesting or actively using anywhere from 3% to 10% of their potential right now. But when you can work with the tree of life, and when you can activate and awaken more of that potential, when we do that, something called a life activation that works with this pattern in your DNA to activate and awaken more of that potential in the blueprints, and then to accelerate the process of more fully embodying that potential, more fully realizing and manifesting that potential, and whatever your purpose is in life, right? So that's a bit of background of the mystery school path, of the Kabbalistic tradition. And there's a lot of methods that have been handed down through the mystery school to really help people accelerate their evolution, right? To awaken that potential and see it really change your life, right? So in the tree of life, the other thing that I'll say in terms of the numerology, so you'll see 10 pathways, 10 spheres, and that is like the core essence of the tree. Those are key aspects of the blueprint. They're like if you imagine, like the scaffolding, to the whole pattern is those 10 points. And then in between those points are what we would call the 22 pathways. So the pathways is a relationship between two spheres. So if you have two spheres, for example, let's say in the middle, we have Tiferet, which is about beauty, it's about healing, it's about the heart, it's about connection to your higher self, right? And then you come to maybe this one, Netzach, which has to do with your emotional side. It has to do with victory of the beauty of nature being manifested into the physical. Sensuality, it also has to do with victory over negative emotions and emotional attachments. So when you look at the pathway between them, you're looking at what is the relationship between beauty and our higher self, and Netzach, our victory, and our emotional self, right, as an example. So the pathways are more complex than the spheres, right? But the pathways, the 22 pathways are, each one of them is like a state of transformation, whereas the spheres are like a state of being, right? So we can just be in a sphere. It's its own essence. But then when you want to shift into new energy and be in a different state of being, you have to go through a transformation. So every pathway is a transformation, or like a process of initiation in life in some way. It's what drives you. And our cycle of human transformation or evolution is like we're constantly being driven to shift and to change. Humans like the comfort zone, right? We love to be in the comfort zone. And if it were up to us, we'd probably just be in the comfort zone all day long and not change and just be like, okay, life is good right here. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not dealing with anything. I'm just going to be right here. It might get a little boring, but we'd probably take boredom over a challenge, because we just tend to resist being outside the comfort zone, right? So therefore, spirit, the universe, life, whatever, has to drive our transformation, right? So the only constant really is change. Everything is constantly moving forward. The stars continue to rotate, the earth rotates, everything is moving, like even down to the atomic level, everything is moving, it's vibrating, it's changing, it's shifting. Nothing is ever static, right? So our idea that we can just stay in the comfort zone is an illusion, because there is no staying still. Everything is moving, right? And so the 22 pathways are the key lessons of transformation that we need to learn to really complete the journey of transformation through a cycle. Now, one cycle ends and the next one begins, right? But as the next one begins, hopefully we've learned from that previous cycle and we've now up-leveled as a result of it, right? So we're now going to get into a bit of the pathways. And altogether, 10 spheres plus 22 pathways is how much?
32.
32, yes, good. So we have some 32, what we call the 32 paths of wisdom, okay, through Kabbalah. Now here, sorry guys, you guys are gonna have to keep reminding me about the other slides over here. So we have 22 pathways, and I'll go back one more image just real quick here. So if you can see on this image here, the pathways have tarot cards assigned to them. Now, traditionally, tarot is not Kabbalistic. Okay, it does not originate from Kabbalah. It originates actually from ancient Egypt, from what we call the family of Ra. And they were 22 archetypes for human experience that were brought through in the ancient Egyptian times by the family of Ra. However, the Tree of Life and Kabbalah is a blueprint for everything under the sun, everything, and in the universe, right? So we can take those archetypes and we can file them into this system called the Tree of Life, because the system of the Tree of Life is an organizing system. And everything about you, everything about creation, everything about, science and relationship dynamics and psychology, all of it, you can file it into the system called the Tree of Life. So when you do that, you know where things go. And it helps you really organize your mind, and it helps you to really start to make sense of how the energies are progressing as we go through the process of transformation. So we have assigned the 22 archetypes to the 22 pathways. And and some of the initiates of this mystery school lineage of King Solomon have, really given a lot of thought to where these go. Now, there are debates, in terms of where certain archetypes go, right? So it's still kind of it's in flux, but this is a pretty good system. And here's another way of looking at those 22 archetypes. This is what we call the Tarot Tableau. This is something that Paul Foster Case, who is an initiate in the Golden Dawn lineage, he really focused a lot on the tarot. And he put the Fool at the top, and then he did 3 rows of 7. And each of those 3 rows of 7 has like a different overriding theme. So at the highest levels, it's more spiritual. Like these are the spiritual ingredients in this top row. It's called preparation and ingredients, right? So these first 7, from the Magician to the Chariot, are like preparation and spiritual teachers, right? So we are the Fool going on the journey through the 22 paths, or through the 22 archetypes. And the first teacher we meet along the way is the Magician, and then we meet the High Priestess, and they're considered like our celestial father, mother, like divine masculine, divine feminine archetypes. And then you meet the Empress and the Emperor, who are more like earthly feminine and masculine archetypes. So they're more earthly father, mother. And then we meet the Hierophant and the Lovers and the Chariot, and we get educated about, the system, and we get educated about relationships, and we then figure out, okay, I've got everything I need. Now it's time for my adventure. And that's really quick, really, really quick of the top row. Then as we come into the second, that middle row on the tableau, this is more about the development of the interfacing, like the soul. So once we're in the Chariot, it's like we're on our adventure. We're going towards our life, let's say. And then as we get into the second row, we're meeting certain key learning lessons for the soul to really be able to develop in order to fulfill its purpose in the bottom row. And so, we start with strength, and we're really learning to tame the beast within, and then we meet the Hermit, who's another guide along the way, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to spend too much time on that tableau, because I want to get into where we are in this journey as well. Mm-hmm. But we are on the bottom row here of the 22, and in the bottom it's about the completion of the work. So this is really bringing it into the physical, right? These higher levels are more spiritual, and this bottom level is more physical. So we're really grounding it into the body, manifesting the results of the whole cycle and learning to embody that spirit into the physical body. So ultimately, it's all about taking the fool, who is young and naive and full of idealism and hope and aspiration, fully connected to the divine yet young, like a child, and take it through what we call the hero's journey. That archetypal journey of becoming more mature, meeting challenges, growing and becoming stronger along the way, overcoming those challenges until we finally get to the last card, which is the world. And the world is like the culmination of the work. The world is meant to represent, the perfection. When you're going down the journey, when you're going down from 0 to 22, 21. You can also take it in reverse because it's a very dynamic system. So you can take the same story, but going in the opposite direction. But we aren't going to look at that one for tonight. So here's another thing I'm going to show you. And this is something this also relates to the 22 Hebrew letters, which are the original essence of the 22 pathways. So if you look at this, it's a glyph. It's called the 231 gates. Comes from a Kabbalistic text called the Sefer Yetzirah. And it says that when you take the 22 Hebrew letters and you put them around the outer rim of a sphere, and then you connect every letter with every other letter, it forms what they call the 231 gates. And these are gates of creation. If they're spun towards the light, right, it brings creation. But if you spin it with malintent or even ignorance, right, and not knowing what you're doing, then it can lead towards bad results or destruction. So we want to spin it. So if you rotate this whole thing clockwise, then it progresses. Like if we have a ticker here and you rotate it clockwise, it progresses through the alphabet sequence from Aleph to Bet to Gimel and so forth in the proper order. So in a static way, it looks like it's going counterclockwise around. But if you're rotating this thing clockwise, which is aligned with the will of God, it follows the proper sequence. If you rotate it the opposite way, then it goes through the reverse sequence. Now, here's kind of the leap that I took, which was to say, well, this looks like, a zodiac wheel, right? And what happens if we put the tarot cards that relate to those Hebrew letters around the outer rim of the 231 gates, then now we have a wheel that shows us a wheel of time as well, or a wheel of progression through the numbers, because the numbers in the pathway approach to numerology is to look at the key number from 0 to 21, whereas in what we call gematria, which is the number of the letter, it's a totally different number sequence, right? So you have like 1 to 10, but then it goes 10 to 100 and 100, up and so forth. So we're going to look at the key number of the tarot archetypes. And so what I realized is that when we shifted from the 1900s to the 2000s, we shifted a pretty big overriding archetypal theme, numerologically speaking. We went from the Millennium of the One, or even the 1900 era, to now the Millennium of the Two. And so we're shifting from individualism to having to figure out relationship and cooperation, which is the two. And so, there's this big hoopla about Y2K. Technologically speaking, it was a non-event, but numerologically speaking, we went through a new shift. And so we started a whole new sequence with the 0 being aligned with 2000. And then it started a 22-year sequence of anchoring all these 22 archetypes into the new millennium. Right? So each of the 22 archetypes are getting anchored through the new millennium. And there are 3 phases that relate to the tarot tableau, right? So we had the first, which is the Fool, which was 2000, and then 2001 to 2007 was that first top row of the archetypes. And then from 2008 to 2014 was that middle row of the archetypes. And then from 2015 to 2021 is the third row of that tableau. And we are in phase 3 right now. And of course, when this first, so 2021 is an interesting date to look ahead to. After 2021, we'll come back to that, but after 2021, we start a new sequence again, right? So the wheel just keeps rotating, but hopefully we will have spiraled up, right? And so we are, we're here at 2018, which is the moon. We just went through the star card. And so I want to just do a little bit of revisitation around what happened in 2017. How did that energy manifest itself in our year that related to that archetype? And maybe, remind people a little bit of some of the things that I said. That video is all online for free on YouTube if you want to find it. To kind of double check if she's telling us the truth about what she predicted or not. But, we can look at some interesting things here in this sequence. So a couple things. 2008, we had, strength, and it was about grace under pressure. So 2008 was an interesting year in terms of, the big crash, right? The recession. But so the main archetype was strength, that we needed to have grace under pressure. But when you add the 2 and the 8, it gives you 10, and 10 was the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune is, has a lot to do with economy, money, and things getting turned, and the wheel being spun, and you don't necessarily know how it's going to end up. But the Wheel of Fortune is ruled by Jupiter, which is all about expansion, but it's also kind of an artificial expansion. It's not necessarily stable. So it's interesting that, and then the 10 reduces to the 1, which was the magician, and that we needed to really become that magician. So there's one example of some things that came along. 2012 was the Hanged Man, and the Hanged Man was, kind of a death or a sacrifice, self-sacrifice, and reversal. Hanged Man is all about reversal and sort of submerging yourself into the waters of the unconscious and going for, vision. And right, so everyone was looking towards 2012, end of the Mayan calendar, what's going to happen, all of that kind of stuff. And the 12 reduces to 3. So the Empress, the Venus energy was there. But you also had 2012. So that was 5, right? So we had the Emperor, which is about leadership. And we were looking to new leadership coming around at that time as well. And then fascinating year was 2016, which was the Tower card. And the Tower was, it's like the false effigy, we built this tower of human accomplishment, right? And yet if that tower is built on shaky foundation, then at some point lightning strikes, and anything that's not built on solid foundation is going to crumble. And so our entire societal system went through a tower experience in 2016, whether it was, our 2016 primary race and the craziness of it and the election results, or whether you're looking at Brexit and, this sort of fanaticism and isolationism that was sweeping around the Western world. And then, I'm sure Eastern world had its own share of these types of themes, right? So there was a Tower year that really shook everybody. I mean, when we all woke up the next day after the election results, everyone was like, even Donald Trump was shocked, right, that he won, So it was like this completely, everyone was demanding for something besides the old system, because the old system was really seen as being corrupt. And so that corruption needed to get shaken. We're still feeling some of the effects of that this last year. And then we're in 2017, which was the Star card. And so just take one look here. So from 2012 with the Hanged Man to 2013, the Death card, and there was actually more, it's kind of sad, but there was more suicides in 2013 on record than any of the other surrounding years. And then 2014 is called Temperance, which is about getting burned in the fire, doused in the water, bang, 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 burned in the fire, doused in the water, bang, bang, bang. It's just like how you sharpen a sword and make it strong, but it's not a pleasant process, right? It's a very alchemical process, but not necessarily a pleasant process. And it requires a lot of patience. And then 2015 was the Devil card. We were visiting all of our materialism and attachment to material stuff, right? And our addictions, and yet also having to have some mirth. There's some levity about the situations that we were being faced by. And then 2016 was the Tower. 2017 is the Star. So pretty much from 2012 to 2017, it was darker. Now 2016, there was some light that came in, but from the bolt from the blue, the lightning strike. And then 2017, okay, it's still nighttime, but the stars are out. There's a little bit of light coming in. 2018, it's still nighttime, but now the full moon is out. Yeah. So there's more light. And then as we come into 2019, it's the sun, so it's daylight again. 2020 is spiritual light coming in. And then 2021 is like the culmination of the work. So let's take a look at the star. And I'm going to go through this hopefully kind of quickly. So the star is the 17, the archetype number 17. It's called the natural intelligence in a book called the Sefer Yetzirah. So it has a lot to do with connection to nature. And it's also her title, like if you were to call that archetype as a being and she had a title, it would be the daughter of the firmament. And the firmament are the waters of creation, right? So in the beginning, God hovered over the firmaments, and those are waters of creation, and then, spoke and brought the light in. And so she's the dweller also between the waters. So she's got the pond here, and she's pouring water into the pond. And then she's also got another pitcher of water that she's pouring onto the land. And so she's striding between two different worlds here, one in the physical, one in the unconscious, or the waters. And then she's got all these stars above her, and she's naked. And all of those stars are 8-pointed stars, which had a pretty big theme last year that related to some of the other archetypes that were in connection to the star. And the key words were around revelation, deep reflection. We were supposed to be doing a lot of meditation last year. If you were meditating a bunch last year, you probably had a lot of deep reflection time and revelations, personal revelations. That might have actually helped you find the light, because the light was in the darkness and the light was within you, right? And it's meant to be you finding the light within, and you being the hope in the world, and you, finding that faith in self rather than all the distraction of the outer. So those were some of the themes that we were wanting to work with last year, and emotional control as well. And the Hebrew letter here that you see here at the bottom is called Sadi. It's like a fish hook. So it's kind of like you're going fishing, and you're trying to fish within the depths of the self to find those morsels of nourishment for your own soul, right? And so one of the other things that was interesting about the star, she also relates to the 8, right? So 17, 1 and 7 adds to 8. And the 8 is the strength card again, which revisits maybe some themes from 2008. But you see some similarity between their posturing even. And so these are the same woman, just here she's naked. Yeah, whereas in the strength card, she was fully clothed. And so they talk about this being, so again, the strength card is grace under pressure. And she's having to tame the lion or tame the beast, the animal side, but through grace and through love rather than from trying to conquer, right? So it's a more feminine approach coming in with the strength card. And then also the star is more feminine, right? And the star is the unveiling. She's now nude. And so they call her Isis unveiled. So this is Isis. And there's another card, which we'll get to later, that is also Isis. So there's several stages of Isis, the goddess, the divine feminine, being manifested in different phases through the whole tarot tableau. And so last year I said, watch for this year to have a lot of secrets being revealed. or things that were once hidden, the light is going to shine on them, right? And interestingly, we did have quite a bit of that come out, right? We had all kinds of things being revealed. Even, for example, 13 million pages of once classified CIA documents that had then been declassified were put online for the first time. And that was in January. So we kicked off January 2017 with 13 million pages worth of finally declassified information from the CIA being put online. And out of that came, there was also, actually, so there was a lot of UFO stuff was in there. And there was stuff about JFK in there. And, it's been taking time for the various investigators and journalists to scroll through it all. And they were available before, but you had to go to Maryland to a particular archive to get access to them. Whereas when they got put online, it was like, okay, this information is now available for anyone who wants to wade their way through it. By the later part of 2017, the investigation of the assassination of JFK was published, right? And that was made available to everybody. And then we also had, it was revealed just in December, last month, right? It was just revealed that there was a Pentagon funded, like an X-Files thing, basically, like a real X-Files, where it was a small group of people who were investigating UFO phenomenon. It was top secret. They had funded about $22 or so million towards this project. Senator Harry Reid was like, it was sort of his brainchild, and because he had a personal interest in it. And, he had a few who were on board, and they were all doing it. And then the funding for it ended in 2012. So from 2007 to 2012, this thing was being funded, but they still continued operating, even though they weren't getting funding anymore. So it's still been in operation. So that just came out last month, right? That the government is still, doing all this UFO investigation. And then, of course, we had the whole Me Too movement and the sexual harassment scandals and all of that was, years old, but finally being revealed, right? And it was especially things that were around, the star card is naked, and there's an obvious sexuality about that. So that energy of whatever it is that's been oppressing that creative energy, and for that divine feminine ability, whether it's in men or women, for that ability to shine in her full glory rather than having to, hold back because of fear, that was, revealed. Right? So there's some interesting things there in terms of secrets being revealed. We also had storms. So the star is titled the Natural Intelligence, and the daughter of the firmaments. And the firmaments are kind of this watery, but it's kind of chaotic, and it's this like stormy kind of place, and so it can be destructive. So I would say that we definitely had a lot of that natural disaster kind of shaking us up last year, right? Between the hurricanes, and then we had the drought, and then the fires here, and then we had volcanoes going off, big earthquake. I mean, it was just like big stuff that really hit a lot of people. Some of the vices of last year that we needed to watch out for were being prone to fantasy, authoritarianism, being materialistic, and indolence. And then also weaknesses, being afraid to follow our dreams, right? Being petty, having self-doubt, and being impractical. And then the imposing your will on others, right? Which, that was definitely the whole Me Too movement was like, that's not okay anymore, right? And then misuse of sexual energy, lust, and idleness. So all of those were weaknesses that were being revealed last year. And this is all at a collective level, but it also hits us at the individual level, right? And then we had, so we had all of those weaknesses. But then the positive of the last year was that, this was a year, 2017, the star card was about bringing hope. And at one point, I said it's really about us finding that light within so that we can be the hope in the world. as individuals needing to take responsibility rather than it being about like, let the leaders lead us and let them be our hope and our inspiration. Like, they're obviously not that anymore. And so we need to be the leaders. We need to find that light within and be the hope for each other. And so, interestingly, there's a lot of headlines as we closed up 2017. There's a lot of headlines that were looking at, well, where was the hope in the last year? And they said, for example, that those who, they really put, like the media really put that the feminine, that women were what were shining through over the last year. So they said, this was in an op-ed on the Truth Out. Someone said that as the year comes to a close, it's time to acknowledge some of the women that made 2017 shine through even through the darkest of clouds. It's interesting language, that really related to the star card, like shining through even in the dark, right? And the feminine. And so we also had this kind of, women stars, like literally movie stars. So for the first time in half a century, 3 top grossing movies of the year were all starring women. Right? So you had Wonder Woman, we had the Jedi Star Wars movie with Rey, and then we had Beauty and the Beast. And, so some of the virtues that the feminine and the star card were trying to really bring forward for us to cultivate within ourselves last year was patience. How many of you had to exercise patience over the last year? And then also inspiration, finding where your inspiration is in terms of where you want to shine. Like, what is your dream? And really then finding your individual unique expression to pursue that dream. And to, have a greater will and a greater level of understanding, and then greater connection to the feminine. So these were some of the strengths that were being emphasized or trying to be achieved over the last year. And, there were other headlines that said, like, women won in 2017. You had the whole Golden Globes thing that we just finished the year with all of this focus on the women and, the Time's Up thing and the solidarity for the Me Too movement. So it's definitely focused by the end of the year, or the second half of the year, let's say, on the feminine, right? And in some good ways, and then in some ways where it got taken a little too far, right? So we need to, this next year is going to have some more themes like that, but it's like we got to find a refinement of the energy and how we're doing it. And and then there were other things with the women where women were really stepping into more action. They were stepping out of being behind the scenes or just staying quiet and stepping into action. Beyond the Me Too movement, there was more women who ran for political offices. There's now 24 seats, whereas prior to that, we only had 14 seats in Congress that were held by women. There was, big push for the equal pay movement, equal pay for equal work movement. So there's all these different women's activist things. Now, the other thing that I said last year for 2017 was watch for galactic connections, because the stars literally, where is our connection to the stars? And also the inner stars, which is working with your own chakras. Right? So there was work to be done with your own inner stars and chakras, as well as then connecting to the galaxy, like I told people, go out and look at the stars at night, like really spend time connecting to that, like absorb that light into your being. And I was waiting for disclosure to finally come, that the governments would find, well, at least the US government, because it was behind all the other governments in terms of disclosing that, yes, we have been visited by extraterrestrial beings. And I think that disclosure did come. There were some headlines, I'll get to it in a moment, but we were meant to be tuning into universal cosmic energy, radiant energy coming to us from the universe, from outer space, not just the stars, but like bombardment of extra energy that was coming in last year. And so there's a couple interesting things that happened. The light that came in, light comes from the spiritual realm and it's being driven, but it comes through what we call the great central sun at the center of the universe. Then it comes through various star systems, then to our galaxy, then to our solar system, and to our planets, and then to Earth, right? So it's like those are all mirrors in a way, bouncing this cosmic energy down to us. We even had we had this massive meteorite shower and more meteorites landing all in like 1 month than, and they were landing all over the place. It was really fascinating. So one of the big events that the scientists were super excited about was that for the first time in astrophysical history, scientists were able to witness 2 stars colliding. Right? Did you guys see this when this came out? And the scientists were like, so excited about it. And this happened in August. They were saying it was like the most spectacular fireworks in the universe. It was like a wish come true. You got everything we wished for. It was like your fantasy observation, right? So the star really showed up. That theme of galactic energy. And, this helped them really discover a whole lot of things, including like where do gamma rays come from, and they were able to see. So if they witnessed this event, it's because that light from that event hit the Earth directly, right? So we were bombarded by gamma rays and all these other cosmic energies from this event. And it was like a big deal. They were also able to identify things like how fast the universe is expanding from this event, and where is gold made in the universe, gold and heavy metals like platinum. So alchemy, universal alchemy was kind of part of that theme. So there's a lot of stuff that came just from this one event, and the scientists were really, really excited. And then we also had some other notable headlines. There was one that I saw in an astrobiology journal that said, life on Earth arrived from super fast clouds of cosmic dust. So we are space dust, and life, they're saying one of their theories now is that life got here through being driven by space dust and these clouds that go really fast through the universe. And the other one was, there was another headline that I saw that said the existence of UFOs is now proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And this came out of that kind of real X-Files department from the Pentagon. This was reported Christmas Eve day. Right? So it's just like before the end of 2017, these types of things were being reported and coming out. So anyone want to share anything really quick from 2017 and your reflection of the year as we've just gone through any of this? Yeah.
I'm a single mom, and I had a hard time when my dad passed away, and so I had to do a lot of grunt work because I was trying to get the right job, and the office job really never manifested. And on a whim, I've been wanting to apply to music school or just the arts, and I finally started in October last year.
Yeah, so you finally decided to pursue your dream, huh?
1,000 times better.
Good.
I feel like I'm living a passion.
Yeah.
Not just grunt work.
Awesome.
Non words of happiness.
Yeah, good.
So that's like the star and the goddess.
Yeah.
Woman powers.
I heard from a lot of people it was a very challenging year. There was a lot of personal stuff that felt like a dark time. There was a lot of challenging stuff. How many of you can relate to that, or at least knew somebody maybe 1 or 2 degrees removed, that like, yeah, I knew like several people around me. I just kept hearing like how challenging it was, right? Yes, Christina.
For me, I felt like that I was experiencing 2 levels of the energy. I was effortlessly manifesting some of my top desires and stars. So I was doing modeling. I got published in a book. I was meeting a lot of people. I was traveling. Experienced a lot of really bright things. But then on like a deeper emotional level was one of the most challenging years. Having my mom pass away, and just relationship stuff and all of the tests that I was being faced with to cause me to come to that, what do I really want? Question, just really strongly.
Yeah. It was life transforming kind of stuff, right? Anyone else? Nikki?
For me, it was very foundational, right? So it was really kind of funny when you said, or not funny, but just always interesting to know how you said 16 was the tower. And that's how I felt like at the end of 16 was like this, I can't do it anymore. Kind of like So I was just seeing areas in my life that were built on like unsolid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2017 was about going back and rebuilding new foundations for everything. Like nothing was broken, but it was almost like it had this like hollow feeling.
Yeah.
Right? If that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it was like, you know, going through and amortizing every single thing in my books for 2 years, and like, I mean, just like every single, you know, home, business, personal, and filling in all of those. Yeah. So 2016 really rocked foundations. And then in 2017, it's like we have to start rebuilding a foundation, but that new foundation needs to be built upon your light, you know, what you are meant to be here to do and shine in as a, you know, if you're to become a bright shining star, what is it that you're going to do in this world that, you know, is going to help you shine in that passion and in your dream, fulfilling your dream. And so now you're going to rebuild your new foundation on that light instead of on the past, which was, you know, probably had some personality and ego stuff that was getting involved, and, you know, false concepts, right? It's just things had gotten corrupted. It might have started off good at the beginning, but it might have gotten, you know, kind of lost track along the way. And so the cracks in the foundation made it weak. And then the structure that's built on top of that made it weak. And then when, you know, the unexpected thing comes in 2016, stuff gets rocked. And then, you know, I mean, I think our society, our whole societal structure was getting rocked. And now this last year has been like, what do we really want? Right. And then the shadow side of what corrupted in the beginning, you know, it's like it's in everybody's face. You can't ignore it anymore. Right? The light's starting to shine on it. And so we can't really go forward to create the life of our dreams that we really envision without addressing the shadow that has been at the root of the corruption and the weaknesses in the first place. So we're still in the dark. We're still dealing with those shadows right now, but the light is starting to shine on it. And then this year, the light is going to shine more on it, right? And it's going to be a full moon rather than like a new moon, which is stars out. So we're going to have a lot more light coming through. Yes, there's some questions from online.
Not questions, but
comments.
John Sebi shared that much was revealed through my studies at Mysterium Center, which started last year. And he said, of course, there has been the increased influx of light after experiencing Empower Thyself.
Yeah, good, yes. That was definitely also part of the themes last year, was like increase your light however you can, right? Through activation, initiation, and so forth, and really follow that path of light. So that was some of the, is there anything else? Okay, great. So yes.
What was a really interesting thing for me, because of course I teach facts and truths and whatever, was this rise of fake news and how hard it is to figure out what truth is anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about things becoming more transparent, but for me it was so shocking to know the rise of robots and how almost nothing on social media is really people.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of artificial intelligence behind it all, and So the truth, though, I think that all of that was making it so that you can't rely on outer truth anymore. You have to find that barometer for truth within you. And that's what the star was really trying to encourage. Go inside, go inside, go inside, and meditate and find your light within, because that's going to guide you on your path of truth, not all this outer distraction. And it's like, it's so crazy making anymore if you're caught up in the media or listening to opinions. That's all it is anymore. It's just opinion. There's very little fact that's even in our news sources anymore. So it's very difficult to rely upon outer sources to be your guide anymore, right? So it's about cultivating that inner guide. Yes.
So Hilda said last year was challenging, but those challenges seem lighter as I focus greatly on developing spiritually and walking my path of truth. Good.
Yeah. So those are perfectly in line with the star, and connecting to galactic sources. I personally had a very galactic year. 1 or 2 new levels of galactic activation. We hosted a galactic activation here what was that? June? Yeah, so we hosted a galactic activation here in June. And then, I went for several more levels of sort of galactic attunement through the mystery school. And they're like completely recalibrating. It's like shifting us out of just thinking of ourselves as humans on Earth to realizing that we are beings connected to a bigger universe, and that there's this whole other systems. There's so many different perspectives and systems that we could be attuning to, but we're so caught up in our human old paradigm way, right? And we're needing to shift into this new paradigm. And some of that new paradigm stuff is going to come to us from galactic connections, not just earthly connections, because we have to reinvent some things here. And we obviously haven't done it ever in the past. We've failed for thousands of years in bringing that new paradigm. So it's like there's new energy and new information and new technologies or new ways that need to come onto Earth. So I think that you can continue that theme. Like the more you can connect to the galactic inspiration and the light coming to us from the stars and the moon and the planets and the sun and the great central sun, coming to us from the galaxies, and get higher level, awakenings within the DNA. So that's going to become a big theme. Let's just move on to this year. So we are coming into brighter time, more light through the full moon. Now, the primary archetype of 2018 is the 18th key, which is the moon. But we're going to cover 4 different archetypes for this year. And the moon card is a really interesting process. It's called, so the Sefer Yetzirah calls it the corporeal intelligence, meaning the body intelligence. So your moon is about the body, and it's also, the title of it is the ruler of flux and reflux. So watch for a lot of cycles, ebb and flow, movement of energy, and then you have to pull back, and then you can move again, and then you got to pull back. And you might even be more like, you might want to pay attention to the moon cycles this year. When we're in a waxing phase and a full moon phase versus a waning phase and a new moon phase, like you might find that, I have found that things are speeding up so much that the cycles of the Earth are faster, but like we might find that just within a moon cycle, 28 days, a lot's going to happen, right? So if you're paying attention to the moon cycles, it's really going to support you, because then you'll know when to harness the energy versus when to just rest, right? So flux and reflux is activity versus rest. There's some key themes here around the creative power of sexuality. So again, those themes that were brought up to the surface over the last year around how we use our sexual energy and what is and isn't appropriate, I'm sure is going to continue in the coming year as a conversation, more light being shined on it. Matters of the unconscious. So what's driving those behaviors that are in the unconscious? Inner organization, we're going to get into a conversation about that a bit later, but that's the actual organization of the body at a cellular level, and also of the mind, how your psyche is organized at the deep levels, right? The levels of the unconscious. And then it's a feminine energy, so it's very much about receptivity, vivid imagination, and also like dreams, because the moon is the ruler when we're asleep often. So it's about, your dream life. And then here it's really trying to show us we have choice, that we can harness the cycles of change and shift their course by our choices that we're making, right? And being authentic. So this authenticity is like, you are meant to be seen like the fullness of the moon, open and not hiding, right? Revealing your full light. And so being your authentic self is that. There's some other keywords here. It's a rite of passage. Okay, you can see here there's the pathway here. It's kind of an undulating pathway. So that pathway here that leads from the waters of the unconscious, and then it goes off, and the grassy area is like the things that are known in this card. And then as you there's a sort of borderland here, and then it gets into the blue landscape, and that's more of the unknown, right? So we're going through a rite of passage, and it's going to be a winding path. It's not going to be a straight and narrow path. There's going to be, you know, that ebb and flow, that flux and reflux. And it's taking us from the known to the unknown. Some of the other things you see here, the crawfish emerging, which can also sometimes be like the scarab beetle from ancient Egyptian, which has to do with, you know, instinct, but transformation as well. And then you have the dog and the wolf baying at the moon. And so this is sort of that animal side. We also have here mineral, so you have rocks and you have plants lining the pond here. So we have the mineral, the vegetable, the animal kingdom, and then you have the two towers here that are watchtowers, and those are meant to be like a demonstration of man-made art. You know, it's a man-made structure. And also the dog versus the wolf, we'll get into this in just a second, but the dog, what's the difference between a dog and a wolf?
Domestication.
Domestication, right. So it's the wolf, the dog represents sort of the art of human influence upon nature, right? So taming the wild, but then making that wild beast into one's best friend. And so there's this juxtaposition between the wild and the natural versus the art, and, you know, how we've harnessed it. And then the other thing I want you to see in this image is from the moon, there's all these rays of light coming down. So that's, the moon is reflecting the rays of creation, right? So that are coming from the sun and from the galaxy and so forth. And it's raining down. You see all these are actually little yods, which is a flame. It's a little flame or a spark. It's one of the Hebrew letters, and that represents the life force energy. So it's raining down life force energy. It's like a mystical dew. Or you could think of it like moon dust. You know, it's this moon dust coming down. So when you're on a full moon, you can harness that moon dust energy. Like, so sometimes we'll do ceremonies here on a full moon, right? So we do a full moon, and when you come together as a group on a full moon and you do ceremony, you get to share in this energy that we can call moon dust, but it's just this cosmic energy that we can harness on that full moon. And similar, like on equinoxes and solstices, but that has more to do with the relationship of the sun and the moon. So ceremonies on full moons, equinoxes, and solstices are really good things to be doing over the next year. The pool here at the bottom, this represents Yesod on the tree of life. And Yesod is the number 9, and 1 and 8 adds to number 9. So the pool is connected to Yesod, and the Yesod is the deep unconscious. It's like it's the automatic parts of us that run our physical life. And so there's a lot of energy here that's going to be this area, the hara, right, or the Yesod area on the tree of life on your body is going to probably be emphasized a lot this year. Women know this already from moon cycles, right? This area gets affected by the moon every month. But it's going to, you know, just pay attention to this area, right? And you're going to want to, in general, pay attention to your body this year. Your body's going to have signals for you. And you need to honor it, whatever its signals are. The Hebrew letter is Kof. Okay, so at the bottom you can see that kind of Hebrew letter. Kof means the back of the head, this area of the brain. And in this area of the brain, you have the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata, both of which relate to deep automatic functions of the body. And even when we're asleep, they're still on. Right, so it runs the autonomic nervous system, for example, the deep somatic system of the body. So this part, and they call this area here energetically the gate to God, right? And it relates to, on the other side, the third eye. So your third eye energy is going to be very emphasized as well as the hara energy. And the third eye is going to then, of course, be about intuition. Right, so deeper reflection. I think meditation again is a very good thing to be doing this year to help develop your intuitive faculties, because the moon is like about intuition. It's about like scrying, having that ability to delve into things that might seem hidden and see beneath the surface of reality. And oh my God, there's so much to say on the moon. So some of the, let's see, did we go over the virtues already? So yes, and then there's some other keywords here, positive keywords. I already covered, no, did I cover those? I don't know. I'm going to cover them again. So it's a rite of passage. I think I was starting to cover them and then I got distracted. There's the rite of passage as we follow the path towards the unknown. There's choice, right? So we can change the direction of the flux and reflux by our choices that we're making. There's truth. Okay, so truth is going to be revealed more and more because more light shining again. Versus illusion, right? So what are the illusions? And we're going to start questioning those illusions. And it might be disillusioning, to start facing up to what illusions we've been living our lives by and realizing the truth, right? It can be kind of hard sometimes to accept the truth. So we have to be careful to not get into fantasy, or, which is another illusion. We have to be grounded in reality, even while we're tuning into our intuition. And other things, moon, what else? Full moon, kind of inspires romance and creativity and more vivid dreaming, sexuality, right? And people's emotional energy expands during a full moon. So watch for that flux and reflux of emotional energy of the collective during this year. Some of the other virtues, intuition and imagination, some of the vices that we have to watch out for, hallucinations, right? So that's fantasy to an extreme, escapism, trying to check out. People in LA in particular like to do that. They're checking out a lot. So, that escapism, however we do it, we all do it, I'm sure, right? Whether it's escaping through, I'm just going to go watch TV now and just not deal with any of this, or I'm, going to do something else. We just passed legal marijuana for recreational use. There's lots of opportunity for escapism. Try to avoid that. Imbalances, your deepest fears, like getting too caught up in fear, and deception and error, or thinking with error. So those are some of the things you got to watch out for. And let's see. Yes, okay, I'm ready to move to the next slide. So the wolves baying at the moon. I would watch out for, pay attention to within humanity, more like the werewolf nature coming out, right? That person, human kind of transmorphing where this other suppressed wild side comes out because it's like they can't control it for that long, right? So there's going to be potentially more people who are going more into their animalistic werewolf kind of side, right? So, and we did see some of that last year as well with some of the shootings and so forth. And I think that when you have people who are unbalanced and they already tip too much one way and the next, as more light comes in, it shines more on both sides of them. And so they, they're going to swing in the expression of that more until they hopefully get the help that they need, or, they figure it out. So interestingly, with the full moon this year, not only is it the archetype of the moon numerologically, we started this year on January 1st with the biggest super full moon of the whole year. So there's a full moon on January 1st. And it was called the wolf moon. Interestingly, I guess the full moon in January is always called the wolf moon, or the old moon. It's the first moon after the Yule. And it has a lot to do with howling wolves. And then we also are going to end January with a full moon. It's a blue moon because it's 2 full moons in January, and it's an eclipse, right? So it's going to be full moon, lunar eclipse. It's actually going to be a blood moon because during the eclipse, wherever people can see it, it's going to look red. And we will see it in North America. And so there's all this moon energy being emphasized. And then as we get into February, we will have a solar eclipse on the new moon, which kicks off the Chinese New Year of the dog. Wow. So the wolf and the dog and the moon and eclipses, we're going to have a pretty amplified year coming up with all of this. That's just that. That's not even looking at what all the other stars are doing. So again, we talked about the wolf being wild and the dog being art or adaptation, right? Adaptation. And the path between them is what the moon is emphasizing. So it's the path between nature and art or adaptation. So we have to find that balance between being aligned with nature and also being aligned with our art or our technologies, right? So maybe this year we can start finding more progress with the sustainable technologies that are more aligned with natural energy. And, you know, it says nature gives us a wild body, art must perfect it. So we are meant to go through a transformational process and perfect what nature has given us, rather than just go back to natural ways, right? Because we're not going back to caveman days. We're moving forward into the new paradigm, and it's going to have high-tech way of life. That is unavoidable. I mean, just watching the futurist stuff, and what they're predicting for based on where technology is at today, they're talking about within 5 years from now, our world's going to be completely different than it is today, right? 5 years, that's not very long. So whether you're talking AI or 3D printing or, you know, movie experiences that are going to be completely immersive and holographic, to medicine is going to be done remotely. I mean, there's like so many things that are coming out from technology that is, people are already doing implants, you know, with technology. Their whole computer is going to be right there on their wrist. I mean, it's all happening. And within the next 5 years, this stuff is going to come. Cryptocurrency, yeah.
Self-driving cars.
Self-driving cars, yeah, there's so much. So our world is, in 5 years from now, it's going to start looking like the Jetsons world that we dreamed up of 20 years ago. So for better or for worse. So hopefully we can, you know, harness consciousness to drive it in a positive way, right? And 5 years from now is, you know, or actually maybe they were saying that already last year. So let's say 4 years from now is looking like 2022.
Which will be the start of the new
cycle. Yeah. So a whole new world, guys, is coming within the next couple of years. I mean, this is pretty phenomenal time that we're living in. And it's really unprecedented. So this path of the moon is saying, look, it passes between two extremes, nature and human art. And we need balance between them. Neither going too far towards artificial way of life and only technology driven, that's not healthy, nor is it healthy to go only influenced by ungoverned natural impulses. So we need the balance between these two. And so that middle path is what's being emphasized here. Other weaknesses that will be revealed this year as the wolves come out, so to speak, greed. These are correspondences to the moon card. So greed, ungoverned imagination, sexual obsession, separatism, excessive empathy, meaning sympathy, being too sympathetic maybe, and withdrawals. And then the other archetype, more shamanic archetype that relates to the moon is the coyote. And the coyote is a trickster. So watch out for tricksters this year, okay? And then we will be faced with our social, societal, and personal intolerances. But they're intolerances of old illusions and delusions and the deceptions that we've been fed for so long. Like, we're going to face a pretty global no more, right? It's already happening. But like, it's going to continue this year. Like, there's just no more. We have reached our limit. We've hit that intolerance point where we're not going to stand for this kind of stuff anymore. Yes and no, because they have to come at it from a proper approach, right? I think that when we're too driven by ego and anger and fear and, you know, distrust and separation, the ego takes that energy of transformation and it drives it in a negative way. So what we need to do is we need to take that energy of, this is not okay anymore, but we need to drive it in a productive way from higher consciousness. And that's, you know, that's the big question, is how well will humanity do with that? So moving forward to the next slide. Yes, so the light of the moon. And I already mentioned the supermoon that we started off with. And so that means the supermoon means the moon is closest in its orbit to the Earth. So the moon was as close as it can get to the Earth on January 1st. It's pretty cool, right? And it's amazing how it aligns with the numerology. Strengths that are going to be achieved this year include unselfishness, simplicity, faith, family harmony, innovation, understanding animals and nature. Okay, so it'd be a good year to connect to animals like pets, and spend time in nature, and also innovate. Benefits achieved also creativity, increased scrying abilities, meaning like intuitive ability to see into the future, and enhanced sexuality and ability to discriminate or to discern, right? Here in Kabbalah, discrimination means discernment of true and false. And the star guided us on our way, while as the moon is teaching us to question everything. Question everything that we're realizing that things were not as they seemed. So the moon is going to shine even more light, and as that greater light shines into the darkness, we're going to realize things were not what I thought they were. Things are not what they seem, so now I got to start questioning everything, right? And by the light of the moon, we can lose ourselves into the enticement of shadows and temptations and distractions, or we can find our way towards our dreams. And we have to learn to tell the difference between what is a temptation or a distraction or a shadow, and what is really truly the light shining from our dreams. And then we have the cycles, right? So that ruler of flux and reflux, paying attention to ebb and flow, waxing, waning, all throughout the year. You're going to have things move forward, and then it's going to seem like they come to a halt, and then they're going to move forward, and then they come to a halt. So just ride the waves, right? Ride the waves and be prepared for that cycle. Try not to overreach when things are not flowing, right? Because you'll burn out if you do. So when things go into an ebb, just, okay, this is a time to regroup, to refuel, and then as things start to flow again, we can push. And the affirmation of the year is, through choice, I can change my experience. Through choice, I can change my experience. Now this key, we've mentioned the crawfish, we mentioned the four kingdoms actually: mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. And then the crawfish, the wolf, the dog, right? And then human artificial development. So this key is the key of evolution, physical evolution. And so this is some interesting things. There's going to be a physical speeding up this year of evolution at a cellular level in the DNA. Something's going to shift. And we're already seeing that in the viruses that are coming out this year, the flu and the cold. I mean, they're really bad, right? And they've been getting increasingly bad year by year. I think that this year is finally going to be the year where human physical body starts to adapt and evolve to become more super immune to these things. I don't know how that's going to look, but at some level we're meant to physically evolve. And this is a really good year if you want to be on top of that rather than it just happening to you. Be on top of that. There are certain things you can do. So like life activation, whether you've had an activation or not, get one, right? So even if you've had one, get another one, like get a tune-up on it so that your DNA is full of light and you'll have more strength, more immunity to support you through this process. And then really pay attention to the body. You might need more sleep time this year, right? Because the body does a lot of reorganizing and restructuring when we're asleep. And then, just really like be in that meditative space as well. So there's things you can do to consciously participate in your own evolution. And then the other big thing about the moon, what is the moon most associated with usually? Tides. Yes, so there's that magnetism and that gravitational pull, which affects our emotional energies.
Changeability.
Changeability, yeah.
That's more motivation for women.
Gender, right? So it's a feminine. So the moon is very much like the feminine energy watching over the earth, whereas the sun is more the masculine energy watching over the earth. So this year it's going to be very much a feminine power and the feminine energy of evolution. So the feminine side of the evolution. So we need to, all of us, whether you're man or woman, need to reclaim proper relationship to the feminine within ourselves and within our relationships with others, right? And how we as a society honor the feminine, right? It's about honoring. It's about the ability to authentically express oneself in their feminine nature. And I'm not talking feminism, right? Because feminism is really, feminine trying to be equal in a man's world, which therefore tends to go more masculine and compete for that equality and demand and, push and assert. And it's a masculine approach. Here we need to find that feminine approach again. And it's more receptive, it's more nurturing, it's more all-inclusive, right? So the feminine tends to be more inclusive rather than exclusive. It's a process of going inwards for all of us, whether you're man or woman. It's the inward side of you, and connecting to your inner self is your feminine side. And so again, honoring your inner self. And it says to be like bamboo. Bamboo is firm, yet it yields. As the water flows through it, it yields, but it doesn't break, right? So it's firm. So think of that in terms of flexibility and adaptability. The moon is ruled by Pisces. So Pisces is the fishes, and Pisces seeks to go beyond the what you see is what you get here and now kind of reality, and peer beyond that into past, into present, into future. Like, what is underlying all of this, right? So, and Pisces tends to get really psychic information usually. So they say, instead of looking at hard, cold facts, they're saying, what's really going on here? What reality is happening where it's more than what meets the eye? And we're going to be asking ourselves that. And maybe also, as feelings start to rise up from underneath, why are these feelings so strong? Like, where are they coming from? What is this really about, right? And so I want to just read to you a message. This is like imagine the path speaking to you. So just kind of close your eyes for a moment. And this is the path message. It has a lot to do with the age that we're in now. It says, I am Pisces. I am the age that is passing away. My evolutionary work is done. My power is spent in this cycle. As the fish gives way to higher forms of life, so the age of the fishes, or the age of Pisces, will give way to an evolutionary leap in consciousness. Will you help to carry this new wave forwards, or will you be dragged along unconsciously in its wake? As the moon, I have seen all births among species. I have watched mutation and evolution, transformation and adaptation, even extinction. I preside now over a new birth. I have power over the waters. I draw up the tides in a great and overwhelming momentum. I preside over the hidden and subtle tides in the evolutionary current. Feel the incoming tide as it approaches. Ride the crest of the wave, and I will carry you forwards into the future. Eons pass, and my light will still shine. I bring a myriad of life forms into being. Diversity is my delight. Life evolves. Journey under the light of the moon and honor the corporeal intelligence, which is of the natural world. Okay, so you can open your eyes. So the age of Pisces, the whole last 2,000 years, plus minus, a little more plus, is coming to an end. It's already been ending, like the last 100 or so years, it's been ending. We've been entering into the age of Aquarius, but now I would say that this is really marking true ending to the remnants of that age of Pisces and entering more fully into that age of Aquarius, right? And interestingly, the last key, the star key, was Aquarius. So finally, this whole idea of evolution is really strong here again. So the DNA itself is going to start restructuring according to the patterns that you hold within your subconscious, right? So if you like took the time last year and this year to really meditate and really clean up the subconscious and restructure it, then the DNA physically and your physical body itself will reorganize according to that blueprint that's in there in your subconscious. So it's really worth taking time to do that this year, right? And, so get a DNA activation, life activation. Go for the next level, get a full spirit activation, get galactic activation, whatever level you're at, take that next step to help support your evolutionary process and get light put into your DNA so that you really have the resources to do so, to evolve physically. And if you're feeling dragged down or like you don't have energy, which sometimes as your body is restructuring itself, you will feel tired. So when you're feeling that, get a boost, of a new infusion of light, a tune-up, we call it, of life and energy into the DNA. And that helps, right? That helps like, oh, okay, now I'm back to myself again. You'll feel like you'll have more energy to do what you need to do. Your spiritual evolution needs to go hand in hand with your physical evolution. Right, so again, that's the two pillars or the two watchtowers. Like we need to find the middle way. So you can't just focus on physical this year. You have to focus on spiritual because the spiritual is what drives the physical evolution. So if you're ignoring the spiritual side of the evolution, personal growth, at the expense of just focusing on physical stuff, you're going to find yourself frustrated probably and not really having as much progression as you'd like. But if you also focus and find the two in balance and do both spiritual progression as well as accomplishing your physical dreams and goals together, moving them forward step by step, everything's going to move forward at much faster pace, right? So don't ignore your spiritual side. I know that it's so easy in our fast-paced world to just get caught up in what we have to do for business or work or, whatever. There's a lot of demands for our time and attention. But right now, like at this stretch of the tarot energy and the archetypes are coming through, like the emphasis is really like you got to put that attention towards yourself and your spiritual development. So this year, also honor your body, listen to your body's wisdom, right? If something isn't right, listen to it. There might also be somatic stuff. So like if you have old traumas or old pent up energy and tension, you might need to release it somatically. Somatic means breath. It means, physical movements, not necessarily like intense movements, but subtle movements. So pull the breath into areas that feel like the energy's been stuck and just sort of, just kind of move it out. And sometimes if it's really intense, you might even need to go howl at the moon, just like breathe into it and become an animal and just like howl at that moon because it's actually really, it releases a lot of trauma. You could even investigate things like somatic experiencing, which is a method. You could investigate, just integration of breath and chakra work and, body. But it's really about embodying spirit. So in Kabbalah, we talk about the kingdom of spirit is embodied in the flesh. So we are spirit beings having a physical experience, and we need to honor this physical body, right? Do a cleanse, do, exercise program, something that's going to really honor your physical body. Get massages, do salt baths.
Like Kundalini.
Not Kundalini. I don't encourage Kundalini. Because, if you're driving Kundalini energy and you have emotional blocks or other energetic blocks in your central core system and the Kundalini starts to rise and it hits one of those blocks, it can actually be damaging. Mm-hmm. It can cause disruption in your whole nervous system, and your psyche. So I don't recommend driving the Kundalini. Just meditate, and by meditation and breath work, just gentle breath work. Just that'll clear things out, and then the Kundalini will naturally start to do what it's meant to do.
What about Qigong?
Qigong is fine. Yeah, that's fine. So the ultimate lesson for this is, really there's an inner organization and reorganization that's going to happen to help you physically manifest your light into this physical body. But it's going to all be taking place at a subconscious level, right? And yet you can become conscious of it and you can work with it if you use some of these methods such as life activation and initiation to help support that process. Now, this is the final one on the moon, and then we're going to talk about the other 3 archetypes and wrap up. So it says, the Yetziratic text, so this is from a ancient Kabbalistic text. It says, the 29th path, all right, so that's this pathway that's highlighted here in the black. The 29th path is called the corporeal intelligence, and it is so called because it forms every body, which is formed beneath the whole set of the worlds and every increment of them. So the 29th path goes between Netzach, which is more of our emotional nature and our feelings and our sensory kind of inputs, and the physical body or the kingdom, Malkuth. So it's the connection between your emotional side and your physical body, your senses and your physical body, your sense of beauty and connection to nature and being, in the body. And so it's very much also about taking your dreams and your creativity, because Netzach is also very much about art, taking that dreams and the creativity and so forth and putting it into action in the physical, right? So this is the connection here. And it's also about the psychology and how that affects your actions, right? So there's a lot of really interesting things here. Now, before we shift, I'm going to highlight something about number 29, because again, this is a numerology talk. I wanted to pass around a special oil blend. For those of you who are here in person, this is a special oil blend that I made for our New Year's Eve ceremony to come into 2018. And it's for the moon specifically. So it's olive oil base, and it's got sandalwood and jasmine high grade essential oils in it. So you can just, shake it up. You just need a drop. And just, put a drop in your left palm, and I'll pass it around. Okay. And then you're just gonna, with your right fingers, you're gonna swirl it clockwise, and you're gonna anoint yourself in a couple locations. Remember the back of the head, because that's where this really relates to. So you're gonna anoint the back of your head, anoint your third eye, because it's trying to activate that. If you want to anoint your hara, right, just below the belly button, and your feet, because Pisces rules the feet, right? And then you just smell, and the affirmation when you're smelling in, or you breathe in, and then when you breathe out, you're gonna say, through choice, I change my experience. Through choice, I can change my experience, right? Through choice, I can change my experience. Sorry, all of you online, I can't give you oil over the internet. But you can still state the affirmation.
Within 5 years.
Huh? Maybe in 5 years. Yeah, right now we can only transmit sight and audio, but maybe in 5 years we can transmit taste and smell and touch too. If we're really entering into the age of Aquarius, we should be able to do that. So while you guys are passing around the oil, I'm going to continue. But just remember, when you breathe in, and then when you breathe out, through choice, I can change my experience. So that's the affirmation for the moon card. So just as you're doing that, a little bit more. So 229, okay, so it's the 29th pathway in terms of how the paths and the spheres are numbered on the tree of life. So here we have a 2 and we have a 9. So we're going to look at those numbers as well. And then the 2 plus the 9 is 11. And then 1 plus 1 is 2 again, right? So the 29th path highlights number 9, which we already said is also Yesod, but it's also the Hermit. Okay, so we're going to look at the Hermit. The 11 is Justice. So we're going to take a look at Justice. And then the 2 is the High Priestess. And so that's really very much another primary energy for this year. Because what's also interesting is that when you look at the whole year of 2018, 2 plus 1 plus 8 is also going to reduce, this one's the Hermit, which is the underlying essence behind the moon card. But the 2 plus the 1 plus the 8 plus 0 is 11. So that's the Justice, which then reduces to 2, which is High Priestess. So we're getting the Justice and the High Priestess and the Hermit in 2 different ways. through the 2018 numerology and then through the 29th path numerology, right? So it's double emphasis of this. So the Hermit is, I'm not going to spend as long on each of these cards because I know that we're starting to push our time, but the Hermit is basically the guide. It's meant to be, you're meant to find a guide, seeking a guide on your path, right? So you want to find a guide who can support you on that path of the middle way. And it's also ultimately about finding the inner guide, right? But the outer guide is kind of helping you find that inner guide, or that inner voice. It's the intelligence of your will. These are just some of the other titles for the Hermit. And then it's about cultivating wisdom and life force energy. Remember how the yods were raining down from the moon? Well, the Hermit, his Hebrew letter is yod. So his life force energy is that creative spark. And so it's really about connecting to inner guidance and alignment with the will of God, and finding that inner guide and the outer guide that can help lead you up to the mountaintop, right? So the Hermit standing here is holding the lantern, and he's standing on the mountaintop, helping to guide you up, right? And he can, sometimes meet you partway down the mountain and lead you the rest of the way up as it gets more steep, because he's walked that path. He's aligned here. You can see the staff. He's aligned with the middle pillar. So it's, finding that teacher, so to speak. And also there might be times, again, that ebb and flow, that flux and reflux. So when there's an ebb, you might need to go into hermit mode yourself, right? Go into the inner planes and do your meditation and recoup yourself. And then again, 9 relates to Yesod, the foundation. Just real quick, I'll highlight some of the biases and weaknesses that this one can identify over the year. Isolation, right? So you don't want to get too isolated, too much in hermit mode. Not being, it says irresolution, escapism, hypocrisy, false pride, being non-committal, fear of the past, being underhanded, indecisive, improper application of power, or taking too long to make a decision, too much deliberation. And so those are things we can watch out for. Strengths and virtues that we can receive from the Hermit: responsiveness, realignment, dependability, unselfishness, openness to change, illumination, and being that strong, silent compassion. And just an enhancement of our spiritual guidance. Connection to ancient teachings is also here. Service, right, and helping guide others is a big piece here. Acceptance of change, and so forth. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the Justice card. So I'm pretty sure with the Justice card coming up that we're going to have a lot of emphasis over the year on courts and judges, and things that are having to go through that court system, and what humanity is looking for: true justice. Now, justice isn't going to necessarily be what we think it's going to be. It's going to be hopefully a higher justice coming through. And part of this then is that we need to just trust that justice is going to be done. But sometimes it's God's justice, right? So the archetype, the goddess, this is also a female goddess. Justice is a goddess. She's the daughter of the Lords of Truth and the ruler of the balance. The best archetype, I think, for justice is ancient Egyptian goddess Ma'at. And the soul is weighed against the feather of truth, Ma'at. And it requires objectivity. So justice is about equilibrium and balance. And it says the faithful intelligence. And then you have karma, right, and karmic adjustments. So we're going to probably have to collectively be facing some karma, right? As the shadow side has been revealed over the last couple of years, now is the karmic return and the adjustment. What are we going to change to address all of this? And then, and that justice is undeviating in the universe, right? And that means it never fails, even if it isn't the way we want to see it. Cause and effect, realignment, and then we're coming to embodiment of more spiritual virtue through justice. And there's also, needing to be responsible and objective, have integrity, and yet there's also forgiveness, right? So there's vices you need to watch out for is being judgmental, thinking that your sense of justice is the right sense of justice, right? And weaknesses we have to watch out for, duality and that separation stuff, not being forgiving. That's one of the things that I see with a lot of the Me Too movement is that forgiveness really needs to come in for there to truly be healing around this, rather than just blame and retribution, right? So justice is what we want, not retribution and vindication and so forth. But a lot of people, are going for retribution. So we need healing to happen, which means forgiveness has to happen in order for us to really then take this as an opportunity and move it in a good way. Other weaknesses, we need to watch out for deceitfulness again, lack of conscience, and ignoring disruptions, right? So if disruptions come, it's a sign for something. Affirmations are, I strive to be just and fair. I believe in divine justice and the order of the universe, right? So there's a certain trusting in the universe to support us. And there's a benefit also here of revelation of consequences. So, as karmic adjustment and karmic return comes, we see the consequences of previous actions. And those are revealed to us, right? And then we have artistic creativity also coming through. Now, with underneath 11 is the 2. So 2 is the other, I would say, primary archetype for this year. The moon is the main theme, the main key. But underneath it all, when you add the 2 plus the 0 plus the 1 plus the 8, and then you keep reducing to the core number, it's a 2. And interestingly, the high priestess is ruled by the moon. She is the moon. Right? So the high priestess is Isis, the original divine goddess in the celestial level. And now, so we have the celestial divine feminine theme coming through this year, and we have the moon and how it rules our physical evolution and our cycles of life. So this energy of the moon and Isis and that divine feminine principle is being doubly emphasized here. And again, this 2 is coming up both from it being the 29th path as well as it being 2018. So this is definitely going to be the year of the feminine, but hopefully evolving from the year of the woman being the star to the woman being aligned with the divine feminine. So that's the big key, I think, is that we need to shift into true feminine principle, because the high priestess is like the primordial yin energy, yin. So she's a little more mysterious, right? She holds her scroll of mysteries. It says Torah on it, which is like universal law. It means the law. But she's a celestial mother, so it's really pure. She's all about purity. Embodiment of the divine feminine in her power. She's sitting between the pillars of the temple. She's sitting on her throne in the temple. She is the high priestess. She's balancing between polarities, right, which is the 2. And, where the moon card is very body-oriented, the high priestess card is very celestial-oriented. So we have this above and below emphasize, and, bridging between above and below, heaven and earth. And we have other key words here. There's a lot of key words here. So you have receptive. These are feminine principles, right? So receptive, internal, focused on the subtle planes, emphasizing intuition. There's also independence, right? So the feminine having a sense of independence, but from a feminine place rather than a competitive place. Having clarity, which comes through the meditation and the inner connections. And then she's also the gateway to knowledge. So seeking higher knowledge is again being emphasized here, kind of like the hermit, to help you progress towards your mastery, right? Self-mastery. And blending inner and outer worlds together, right? So the high priestess has quite a lot. Overcoming self-made obstacles. So we had the karma in the last key, Well, in the High Priestess key, a lot of our karma is a self-made obstacle. And so High Priestess comes along to help us overcome those self-made obstacles and balance our emotions, revealing hidden mysteries. These are all some of the themes here for the High Priestess. Pay attention to your subconscious. Pay attention to your dreams this year. Journal your dreams. That'd be a good thing to do, is like keep a dream journal. Even if you don't understand it, if it was a vivid one, it was probably worth writing down. Anything feminine, right? The anima principle of humanity. Passive, not passive in the sense of weak, just introspective, receptive, waiting to respond rather than initiating, right? And really cultivating the inner world. Now, and it's purity in the feminine energy, rather than competitiveness or selfishness or whatever. We need to come from that pure place. There's a steadfastness. There's a contemplation. So rather than acting out of reaction, it's like, let me really sit and contemplate what's going to be the best approach here. And the feminine is always going to come from like that mothering, what will protect the children most, right? So boundaries have to be put in place, right? The feminine's job is to place boundaries. So, there's laws or there's rules, so to speak. There's form that has to be given. And yet it's not to restrict, it's just to protect, right? So there's a difference there. And in the vice, we have to be careful of inertia, rigidity, and being capricious. And so really just taking that time to connect to those energies of the High Priestess. So Melinda Gates opened up this year with a article, an opinion editorial for Time magazine called "It's Time for a New Era for Women," a new era for women. And she was examining how powerful women-led movements are. And how women-led organizations really are changing the world and are getting things done, and that it's crucial for investors to be investing in more women-led organizations who really want to change the world, because they're doing it. And some of them are doing it on a shoestring budget. So why not put more money into giving them a raise if we really want to change the world for the better? And so women tend to be very motivated to have an personal impact on issues, right? To make a difference to community and to really drive progression in key areas. But again, I'm going to say, outside of the matrix way of thinking, the archetypal energies of the mystery teachings would be, yes, definitely the feminine needs to stand up and say, no more of this corruption, no more of this abuse, no more of this, and here's how we're going to be creative, and we're going to birth a new world. We're going to bring light into this world. So it needs to be driven by truly divine feminine principles rather than by feminism or by masculine, principles. And so it's really like feminine energy is going to be an embodiment of love, compassion, mercy, forgiveness, nurturing, bonding, cooperation, relationship oriented, right? It's unity. It's that mother love and protector energy, holding space for people, holding space for people to learn through their own choices, even though we also want to provide protection, so not controlling, because that's when you start going into some of the vice. If the mother energy starts to become too mothering, it can go into its vice because it becomes too clingy and controlling. So we have to be giving enough freedom for people to make their own choices, and we hold space and we hold the vision for a higher outcome, and that they will, we can pray inwardly to their higher self, so to speak, that they'll, make the choices that are going to be aligned with their highest good. Receptivity. And then the feminine's role is to take the energy in from the spiritual planes, take it into our hearts, move it to the womb, and then birth it into the world. So we have to accept into our hearts that higher vision. We don't necessarily need to initiate that higher vision or be the originator of that higher vision, but we need to accept those higher visions into our heart and be willing to then birth it into the world and help be a part of making it manifest, rather than us having to be, the top that gets all the credit. So this is where, women need, there should be equal pay, but we don't necessarily need to be the ones getting all the credit, because that's a very masculine way, right? Yes, we can be the star, but the star is really by shining our own virtue of the divine feminine, rather than by having to compete for recognition, right? So in our patriarchal era of the old paradigm, there's a lot of competition to be the one on top. And that has definitely influenced the feminine way, because that's all we've learned. But in the true feminine principles that come through from creation principles, without it being about social roles, it's really about holding the form and being the vessel, being the container to nurture and then birth that form. And to do so through love and mercy, and the desire to be in unity rather than in competition. So these are some of the themes that we really need to encourage women in particular to align with. And then within ourselves, all of us have that feminine side inside of us. And so how can we honor that feminine within to really encourage this? Now, the other thing I want to show you on the High Priestess card is where it falls on the tree. It's the middle pillar from the very top of the tree, Keter, which is the divine, purest divine light, down to Tiferet, which is the heart energy, which is how the divine light reflects itself in us, within our own soul. So the High Priestess is very much aligned with that middle pillar. My will is thy will, right? That we want to do the will of God, or the will of the divine. And we want to bring that into our heart so that we can then birth it through the womb, 9, Yesod, so that we can manifest it into the earth. So aligned with the middle pillar is the main theme here. Now, the High Priestess card, or pathway, is the longest path on the entire tree. So it will have some challenges because it is the longest path. And the Hebrew letter that corresponds here is Gimel. And Gimel means the camel. And the camel is like the vehicle or the ship that people would go on their long journeys through the desert with, right? But that camel was well equipped because it could hydrate itself for weeks, by having that water in its hump. So it can be a long, dark process on this pathway. So this year might feel like an endless year sometimes, but, and it will be dark, and yet there's light, right? Because we have this direct connection through the High Priestess key and the moon to that light coming in from the higher sources. So what this path is telling, especially with camel or Gimel, and that long distance that we have to travel, is that we need to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining, right? So really, and independence again comes up. So really being able to rely upon yourself. And that level of self-reliance is only going to come when you've really connected into the inner depths of yourself. You've done the inner journey, because otherwise you're not going to trust yourself because you're not connected to yourself, right? So that inner work is, again, really emphasized here these last 2 years. And that's how we accrue the wisdom. So there will be testing on this path. In this next year, we have to learn to overcome those self-made obstacles. We have to learn to overcome and remove the barriers between the inner and outer worlds. We have to really, it teaches us to really face anything that opposes us from realizing our highest self. It's the gateway to knowledge. So, we have to balance our emotions so that we can attain that higher knowledge. And, really just overcome any obstacles that we've created in our life, whether we brought it in from prior to this life or we created it during this life. Those are needing to be overcome this year. And really connecting into our highest intuition, cultivating that third eye energy, right? And so again, like one of the things, once you've had a life activation that I highly recommend is a spirit activation, because that awakens the old brain. It awakens the intuitive faculties, and it really helps to bring those evolutionary stages of the brain to their full completion so that you can really connect into the soul, and the soul can be aware of spirit embodied in the physical. And these can bring some pretty rapid shifts. Do be aware again of that DNA level shifting within you. if you haven't had a life activation, or if it's been a while since you've had a life activation, get one, because it's really going to help you. And then initiation is another step. No matter what step you've already taken, there's more, right? So when you initiate, beyond activations, like turning on the potentials. Initiation then helps you go pass through that gate of knowledge, and you get access to deeper mysteries. And there's tools and methods that can help you be self-sufficient, basically, to have the tools in your hands so that you can cultivate and develop that own spiritual empowerment within you. And then it accelerates your path of progression. So if you haven't yet been initiated, there's a 2-day class called Empower Thyself, which is the first step of initiation into the ancient lineage of the mystery school. A prerequisite to that is a life activation. So as long as you've had a life activation, then you qualify to get initiated. And then if you have already done the Empower Thyself initiation, then look at your next step of initiation. And, there's several steps of initiation, to go forward, where you can become the light, that hermit holding the light for others, becoming a guide for others, versus just focusing on your own. And so there's, healers and so forth. So I just want to show you one more thing here as we come into these final stages, the final 4 cards, the moon. So we've just done the star, the moon, the sun, judgment, and the world. So look at how everything gets lighter, 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 right? Now, we saw this last year as the light started to shine in the darkness and things were being revealed. It also brought some pain to realize what was being hidden before, whether it was in the self-realizations, or whether it was, societally, or whether it was within our family or whatever, right? The moon, brighter light. So more light's going to shine on what's been hiding in the darkness. And when we face that, it can bring some pain. It's not always comfortable to change. As the sun starts to shine, now we're in full broad daylight. The shadows can't hide anymore, anywhere, right? So they have to be dealt with. But as that light comes in, the more you can see it, the easier it is to deal with it. And then as the judgment key comes in 2020, that is like spiritual light, right? So now it's like the Annunciation, the angelic kind of energy coming in, and we're being called up. The figures are being called up out of these coffins, but the coffins represent 3-dimensional reality. So it's like we're being called up out of this 3-dimensional way of perceiving life into a higher dimensional reality and awareness that sees beyond the veil, sees into the spiritual light, spiritual dimensions. And, I'll be really curious to see, how this all plays out. And then 2021, the world key, is like the culmination of this 22-year cycle. And then, as we mentioned, we enter into a whole new world. Now, it's like all the archetypes that are needed to be anchored for the new paradigm world that we're going to build have been getting anchored between now, the past, since the new millennium, especially since 2012 and into 2021. So from 2012 to 2021, it's a 9-year cycle of final archetypes getting anchored before we enter into the new paradigm. And what the new paradigm will be, I think it's going to take time for it to fully manifest and reveal itself. But all the resources, all the technologies, all the awarenesses, all the new ideas, they'll be here. They'll be accessible to us. So then it's a matter of us implementing, right? So the next 4 years, if I can't emphasize this enough, guys, it's critical. It's critical. And all the things that we think are really important of our daily lives really aren't by comparison to the bigger evolution that humanity's on right now. We are going through a massive transformation at a global scale. And the most important things we can do is find our middle pillar. Find how we can create that experience within our own lives of how we want to live our new paradigm way of life, right? What is our Shambhala, or our, heaven on earth? How can I start creating that for myself now? How can I align with that inner light and that inner potential and that true purpose that I'm here to fulfill which have been a part of my dreams of what I've always wanted to do, you know, at some level, how can I start living that now and manifesting that now so that when we get to 2021 and beyond, we'll be ready to help lead the way into the new paradigm. So it's really, really important to focus on that personal development right now and overcome your own shadows, tap into your own light, and really start shining that light for others as well, right? Step into some level of service to help more people wake up, because how this goes, guys, the technologies are at our disposal within the next 5 years. If humans continue to use them the way we have been using them, where do you think we're going to go? We're going to go into one of those dystopian worlds, right? Because there's all kinds of movies that show what it could become, right? All these sci-fi and futuristic movies, right? They show what it could become if we go into the dystopian way. And that's very much a possibility. But there's also the other side of it, that if enough people can wake up, a critical mass within the human collective consciousness can wake up, then we can direct it in the other direction, which is to create more of a utopian world, right? More of a Shambhala, or a much more sustainable world, a world of peace, a world of harmony, a world where we can all thrive and we can all find our, you know, cooperative synergy and way of getting along, and everybody can do what they want to do and yet contribute in a productive way, versus all the greed and competition and everything that's been driving us from the old paradigm. So it's a very critical time on the planet. And as this cycle starts to come to a close, it's not the end of the world. It's just the end of the world as we knew it. Honestly, the end of the world we knew is already done, right? That ended prior to 2012. The amount of transformation that's just happened within the last 10 years has been pretty amazing. And yet that technology and our consciousness waking up is all speeding the process up. And just within 5 years from now, the world's going to be completely different again. So it's not the end, it's just a new world, right? So what happens beyond 2021 will be it's yet to be determined, honestly. So we need to create it. And more conscious people who have higher level of awareness need to create it. Yeah, so go ahead and take a picture of this if you like. These are things that you can do. They're mostly aligned with the moon to really support you in your own process this year. And I've said them all along the way. Meditate, do some honoring your body and somatic work, get life activated, full spirit activated, galactic activation, whatever level you're at and whatever options are available to you. Make choices that are really true to your true self rather than your false self. Be authentic no matter what others think. Be who you really are. Make the choices that are going to support you in that. Have strength and courage to follow your dreams and your vision and take it into action. Be careful around delusions and self-deception. Participate in group ceremonies, especially full moons, equinoxes, and solstices, which we offer. Not every full moon, but we offer a lot of full moons, and then we do every equinox and solstice here as well. We have great ceremonies. And then take your next step, whatever that is, to your path of progression in the light, whether it's next level activation or initiation, or ascending the tree of life. We've got pretty much everywhere where people are tuning in, both online and here locally. We have Kabbalah ascension classes that are either just now starting or about to start. The 10-month journey that is basically going from Malkuth, where we are in the physical, and ascending to reclaim our true divine light. And you ascend step by step over this 10-month process to fully awaken the tree of life within you and integrate it within your life. And it's an incredible journey. You can accomplish in 10 months of ascending the tree of life what might take you 10 years of other methods, whether you're doing it through psychology or somatic experiencing or through personal growth stuff or just personal studies and development. That journey of ascending the tree of life is a very accelerated process. So you can accomplish a lot in a very short amount of time with the amplification that comes from that ascension process. Prerequisites to that is that you've gotten a life activation and you've had the first step of initiation called Empower Thyself. So for those who are listening online, I know that Kabbalah class just started in Austin, as well as San Francisco. We did that last weekend. Toronto starts one January 13th and 14th, the Kabbalah Ascension. Boston is going to start January 27th and 28th. Here in Los Angeles, we're starting March 17th and 18th. We have just 9 spots left. And then in Seattle, they're also starting March 17th and 18th. So, and these classes usually only come around once every year and a half to 2 years. So they don't happen like all the time, right? So it's a good opportunity to get in on the tree and the journey of ascension, which literally works within your DNA and reorganizes your mind and everything so that you can be more aligned with your middle pillar. So I'm happy to take questions.
Question from Nick. Can you recommend any specific material about Kabbalistic numerology for deeper study?
Not really. You kind of have to study Kabbalah if you want to understand Kabbalistic numerology. Kabbalah has always been an oral tradition, and so most of the teachings that we do in Kabbalah are given by word of mouth, orally. There's some books, but I haven't really come across a specifically Kabbalistic numerology book. So it's really more like you got to immerse yourself into the study of Kabbalah to understand how numerology works within the Kabbalistic system. There's numerology books out there, but they're more of a New Age genre versus a Kabbalistic genre. I mean, they're good. Any study of numerology, I would say, is good, but it's different interpretations and slightly different approaches. But when you do the Kabbalah Ascension course with us, we do get into, in the first weekend, we get into how to identify your numerology, at least which part of this tree of life your soul came in through, and what's sort of the base operating system of your soul's framework, right? Your Mac OS, which version are you, kind of thing. And then, when you get into studying deeper into it, we also get into how that aligns on pathways and other aspects. It's not really a book I can recommend, unfortunately.
And Sarah is asking, are there any resources or online platforms that can shed more light on some of the themes you discussed?
Well, you can certainly look up some of the books, for example, by Paul Foster Case. He gets into the tarot. And Kabbalah books in general that I recommend are the Mystical Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. If you've taken Kabbalah before, you could also start studying into Gareth Knight. Ted Andrews, if you've never read a Kabbalah book before, then I recommend reading Ted Andrews' Simplified Kabbalah Magic. Online, I don't really trust online sources because they're...
You have videos online.
Well, I have videos online, yes, thank you. I have lots of videos online. If you want to go to youtube.com/Universal Kabbalah, I have lots of little introductory videos to the spheres on the tree. And I have previous numerology talks as well. The whole full things are on there for free. And then we have lots of resources on universalkabbalah.net. You can also go to themodernmysteryschool.com for finding out more about the Modern Mystery School. And we have lots of articles and stuff about Kabbalah on universalkabbalah.net. So those are a couple of resources.
Can I go back to the slide that had
Which one?
the one that had like the layout of what we could do.
Okay. Yes.
I think it's interesting about the forcing of the DNA changes, because a lot of people don't know that the flu virus is the only 8-stranded DNA on the planet.
8-stranded?
8-stranded.
Wow.
And a lot of the geneticists feel that from the beginning, it's been a duality, a fight, not a fight, a dance between our immune system and the flu virus that speeds up evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely have 2 major flus coming this particular year.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was commenting on is that it's one of the reasons to get your activations. Viruses are anaerobic. So the more oxygenated you get your blood and the more light you have in your system, the less they can flow.
Yeah, don't get your flu shot.
Right.
Because that's based on the previous year's strains, and it's already mutated. So get your life activation and get energy in your DNA, and you'll have more vitality and life force for your immune system to just naturally be able to fight it. And, you know, take your herbs, like take your adaptogenic herbs, take, you know, the stuff that's antimicrobial. I really personally like the wellness formula by Source Naturals. It's my go-to anytime I start feeling anything come on. And, you know, there's a lot of the immune building stuff from medicinal mushroom stuff. And, you know, oil of oregano is a really good one to go to. Ginger, you know, these things. So use herbs because your body knows what to do with those things. Don't put poisons in. If you really come down with a bacteria and, you know, you have to get an antibiotic, then go do that. Don't suffer, don't get pneumonia. But, you know, I prefer and recommend a preventative approach, which is lifestyle-based maintenance versus only dealing with something after it's become a problem. So, you know, get light put into your energy system. We have a remedy also, or not a remedy, can't call it that. We have a vibrational water, homeopathic spagyric, alchemical spagyric, that when you get a life activation, you get a set of it. And the morning set helps to neutralize environmental toxins and viruses and bacteria, while the evening one helps to integrate the light into the DNA and clean up any of the damage in the DNA. So you can take that. It's called Crystallis and Purificato. That's also really good to be taking on a regular basis. And hydrate and oxygenate. Right? So
alkalize your diet.
And alkalize, yeah. So lots of greens, alkaline water, right? Not tap water, or highly filtered and alkalized tap water. Alkalinity, by the way, guys, when you're doing alkaline tap water, it's better to go with mineralized alkaline tap water as opposed to ionized alkaline tap water. Because mineralized, it's like, it's the actual minerals are in there, whereas ionized is just they've pulled the electrons off of the atoms and it holds a charge, but it doesn't stay that way. And when you put it in your body, then it attracts ions to it. So mineral water is much better, meaning like high level alkaline mineral content. Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes.
What was the wellness formula by who? And
Source Naturals.
And is that drops?
It's drops, yeah. I prefer the liquid. They have capsules as well, but I prefer the liquid.
Like Whole Foods or whatever.
Whole Foods, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so pretty much right at the end of last year, I just noticed that like a lot of my closest relationships drastically shift. A lot of new people coming into my life and new awesome people, but like new people.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm realizing I'm having this energetic realization where I'm kind of like reclaiming back my energy from this timeline of what I thought was going on. Those people are really close to me.
Yeah.
And then learning to reopen back up while still staying centered. And so like my question has to do with how to like really stay centered when developing new relationships and understanding that with themes.
Okay.
Like,
so just to reiterate, so you realized or experienced a lot of old relationships falling away, new ones coming in that are really good and of a different vibration, but you're wanting to make sure you're staying centered while cultivating those new relationships and also understanding the context of why all this is happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing I will say is that the Tower card was also like the birth canal, you know, and kind of like in birth and labor, you know, there's the contractions and there's the pain and and then finally there's the rebirth. So the star is like the rebirth out of the birth canal. So you've been through a rebirth. And so a lot of times the old friends and relationships don't relate to the new energy. And sometimes they will fall away. But in your new birth, in your new life, it's a new you. There's a greater amount of light coming through with that. And so new energy, new relationships, new life opportunities will come along as well. So I think it's right in alignment with all of it. And in terms of how to stay centered while you're cultivating all that, again, it's like both the star and the moon are saying, know thyself, go within, right? Cultivate your inner strength, your inner light. Don't get so wrapped up in the outer, right? Don't define who you are based on your relationships or what you do or, the people you hang around. Or even don't let society define you either, right? You define yourself based on your inner true you. But to find that, you got to really get to know yourself. You got to spend time by yourself. So there's that going inwards and taking time to meditate, connect to your higher self. There's a lot of places, the Mystery School, we often offer sanctuary meditation classes where you're taken up into what's called the sanctuary and you have this opportunity to connect to your higher self and your guides. So, anytime that's offered, I would encourage you to take advantage of it because it's a really clean way of getting in touch with your true guidance and really discerning what's coming through from my higher self and my guides versus what's coming from my ego, just what I want to hear. Because we will do that to ourselves in meditation sometimes. It's like we want something and we'll just try to make it be that way, but that's our ego. So learning to discern between that voice of the true higher self versus the ego is a really important thing to do for cultivating that. Okay, guys, so we've really gone overtime. You've been great. You've been very patient. I know it's a lot of information. We have recorded this. We will see how the recording turns out. And if you registered and paid, whether you're here in person or online, we'll make sure you get access to that link.
Cool.
We just have to figure it out. This is our first time doing recording on Zoom. So, but it won't be edited. It'll be exactly how it showed up on this, but you'll have the content so you can review it over the years. So I know it's a lot. Yeah, it'll have the voice for sure. Okay. Any final things online, Sonia?
One question. So love the info on more light in the system. The virus has less points to cling on. Any word other than light that is more scientific if people ask to explain it better?
Well, health, more harmony, homeostasis, right, within the system, and that strength of the positive immunity, right? It's a positive immune system. Life force, right? Energy. So when you put energy, scientists aren't going to care about chi either. When you put energy into your cells, your cells take up that energy and they can do things with it, right? So same with the DNA and so forth. But physical light, your DNA actually responds to physical light, biophotons. I don't know if scientists in America are hip to the idea of biophotons, but biophotons are coherent light that's transmitted and received by the DNA. So we are channeling coherent light into the DNA, but it's spiritually sourced and then brought through. There's also epigenetics, like, your attitudes, your emotions, your thoughts, all of it affects the epigenetic expression of your DNA. Mm-hmm. And if you're stressed and you're negative and you're constantly thinking from a victim state, then you're contracting and you're suppressing the positive expression of your DNA. It turns off those epigenetic layers. Versus when you're in positive emotional state, positive thoughts, and feeling empowered, you're not stressed, and you're in gratitude, especially like you're in gratitude or you're in those feelings of love and joy and so forth, then you're going to wind up expanding and allowing for more of the expression of the DNA. So those are just a couple keywords. Okay, guys. Good night. Thank you.